on the link that's sent out to members and available publicly. When I invite someone to speak, can they please clearly state who you are for the benefit of anyone who's listening to the meeting so they can identify who it is? Can I also warmly welcome any members of the public and media who are joining us today? And we seem to don't have any of those. No planned fire drills, and if the alarm does sound, please follow the Democratic Services officers out of the building. The meeting is now being recorded and will be available online at some point. Finally, as agendas are now viewed electronically, can I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. And before we start, I'd like to thank Councillor Prior Sankey for providing us with cakes for our Swan Song meeting. And in order to take advantage of that kind gift, I'm proposing that we take a break after item 5 and before item 6 for about 5 minutes, so we can all have a cup of tea and a piece of cake, and then we'll move on to item 6 later on in the day. Councillor Reid has informed me that he needs to take an important phone call at about 11 o'clock, so he may leave the meeting at that point. I don't think there are any other housekeeping reminders, so I will ask Jamie to list the apologies, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. I appear to be echoing. That could be me.
I think that's going to be better. Sorry about that. So we've received apologies from Councillor Aulia and Councillor.
Oh, hello. Sorry, I don't know. We can't hear you at all. We could hear you, and now we can't hear you.
Thank you, Susanna. We'll try again.
Sorry, and also I don't know whether you received my apologies. I've got an injured knee, so I'm online.
Yes, we have received your apologies. And,
thank you. And then Tom asked me if I could say he's in traffic, but he's arriving imminently.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you. So Councillor Tom Power is on his way. We haven't had any news of Councillor Bridge or Councillor Coles, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Yeah. Right, can we try your mic again, Jamie, just to make sure it's all functioning?
Is that working? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you, Councillor Denton.
Right, splendid. Okay, thank you very much. Right, the second item on the agenda are the minutes of the previous meeting. They have been circulated. And just to remind you, there is a confidential minute attached to them. So I'm going to ask people if they're content with the public-facing minutes. However, if there are any comments to be made about the confidential minutes, we will need to go into confidential session to discuss them. So the first question is everybody happy with the minutes that are publicly facing? Or are there any comments? Can I have a proposer for that, please? Second, thank you, Councillor Ham. The second question is everybody content with the confidential minute as well? Councillor Sankey, yeah, Councillor Ham, yes. Right, so that would appear to me to say that the minutes have been approved in their totality, and therefore I'm happy to accept them and sign them as a true record, which I'll do in a moment. Right, the next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest related to items arising on the agenda other than those that are publicly available? Okay, nothing said. Jamie, do we have any public questions?
None received, Chair.
Right, moving swiftly on to the community's outcome tracker. And just bear with me a moment. I think most of the things are now up to date. Just running quickly through them. I'll go through the amber ones rather than the green ones. Local bus services we talked about in September last year. This will be added to the forward plan for the new Scrutiny Committee, and the new Scrutiny Committee is going to be called Climate, Place and Communities. Is that correct?
Climate, Place and Environment.
Climate, Place and Environment. Its first meeting, I think, is scheduled for June.
Early June, Chair, correct.
Early June, yes, thank you. Housing updates, the scrutiny manager will add to the forward plan for the new scrutiny committee. And I think one of the things, there will be a lot to pass forward when we come to discuss our forward plan. Later in the agenda, it will be on the understanding that this will be put forward to the new committee chair for consideration. It has to be said that the new committee will have a much broader remit than this particular one. So there may, some of these items may not come forward as quickly as members here may have hoped. The work programme has been just mentioned that's going forward to the new committee. Turning to the 26th of March, the Octagon, this is an ongoing issue, and the new scrutiny committee will be asked to look at this sometime in the autumn, probably October, when the business plan has been finalised. We spoke last time about the gypsy and travellers and vehicle dwellers. There is a feasibility study that is being put in train. I suspect that as that starts to take shape, it will come back to scrutiny for some sort of consideration. But at this stage, it's very early. But we will keep our eye on the ball on that one, or make sure the new committee does. And we then come to the 30th of April, which is today's agenda, and we're going to have the annual report from the portfolio holder, Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts, and we're also going to have an update on Fusion Leisure, which leads us very neatly. And I've got when I said we're going to have a break, I got my numbers wrong. We're going to have a break after the leisure services, not now, because it's a bit previous. Yes, Marcus Craig.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to have while we're on the outcome tracker. Obviously, you pointed out the bit about the new scrutiny committee, and obviously there'll be a new chairman. I don't know who's going to be, but if it's yourself or whoever. But how do we? Because obviously, I'm conscious that's June. We talked about bus services in September, and obviously everybody knows I always have a bee in my bonnet about the fact that you still can't get a bus from Minot to Bridgewater. And I wondered how we make sure that doesn't get lost in the ether and gets put on as soon as possible. Who do I need to speak to? Because I understand there's some there's been funding made available from the government, and so I want to make sure that it's talked about sooner rather than later.
Okay, can you bring that back to the work programme discussion at the end? I need to say that the leader of the council at the last council meeting did inquire whether I'd be interested in chairing the new committee, and I said I would, but of course it is subject to endorsement by full council next month. So I hope if council is content for me to continue chairing this sort of committee, then I would like to think there will be a certain amount of continuity going forward. But I think what I'd like to do under the work programme section later on is wrap up all the work that we've done, that we're happy we can sort of sign off, but also flag going forward the stuff that is still outstanding, and the bus services I think will be one of them. As I said earlier, the difficulty is that the new committee will have a much bigger remit, and so we'll just have to see how that goes. Are there any other questions? Right. Moving swiftly on then to item 6, we'll have a break after this item, but this is a leisure services update. So we are lucky to have Dan Webb and Stuart Winslow with us to present it. Some of you may be aware that Fusion Leisure, which was our operator in the old Mendip area, has run into difficulties, and I think we're going to get an update as to the current situation from Dan and Stuart. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have got a few slides, so I'll just share those on the screen, and then we'll get going. Hopefully you can see those, everybody, online as well. Great, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you this morning about...
Sorry, Dan, I've got that's an old one. That's an old lost audio. I think so, yeah. You can hear it. Yeah, okay. All right. Sorry, Dan. Carry on.
Yeah, you hear me okay? Yeah, great. So, yeah, thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you about the leisure services in the East area, former Mendip, as we say. So just as introductions, I'm Dan Webb and joined by Stuart Winslow. We're from the Council's Culture and Leisure team, part of the Partnerships, Localities and Culture Directorate. So this presentation it really is a follow-up, just move on to the next slide here, to a key decision that was made on the 25th of March by the Deputy Leader. And that was accompanied by a confidential paper, which was shared with all members. And it was approval for the council to enter into a short-term 3-month arrangement with Fusion Lifestyles administrators. So hopefully everybody here is aware of that situation. That's where we are right now. As per the slide that you can see, Fusion Lifestyle are operating 5 leisure facilities in the East area, and that's under a lease. And that arrangement was put in place back in 2015 by the former Mendip District Council. And so obviously was inherited by Somerset Council when we came to be. So we'll go through these slides. There's not many of them, but then perhaps we'll pause at the end for questions. So let's move on to context and background. So just to reiterate, really, the operator Fusion Lifestyle is currently in administration. We have a short 3-month arrangement with their administrators. That takes us to the end of June. And of course, we'll want to maintain those services for the benefit of the local communities and make sure there are no potential closures of those facilities. So that's where we are right now. And what we are doing, of course, is a very rapid procurement process to bring in a new operator from July that will continue the operation of those 5 centres. So on that, that's just by way of a very quick introduction. I'm going to hand over to Stuart and he can tell you a little bit more about the actual procurement process that we're going through. So we'll start with the process and some timelines.
Thank you very much, Dan. Yeah, so I'm going to just talk you through the procurement process that we're going through. And as Dan alluded to, it would normally be a process that would take somewhere in the region of a year. And we're accelerating that to coincide with the end of the agreement at the end of June. So it means that we have to operate at pace. And I'm just going to start by just talking through the timelines. So first off, we pulled together the emergency procurement pack, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in slides coming up. So that was done, and I'm very pleased to say that we are on track in terms of having prepared that pack and then issued it. So that has gone out now to tender, and I'll talk again a little bit more about what the process was there and the decisions made. So that's happened. So I'm very pleased to say that we are on track. So there will be a week of clarification for the opportunity for the leisure operators to ask any questions and things like that. We would expect submissions in a couple of weeks' time in mid-May. Towards the end of May, that's the period that we are going to evaluate and moderate the submissions back to us. And then our intention will be to award contract at the end of May. So what we're looking for is as long as mobilisation period as possible, given the time frame. So throughout June, we expect to have chosen our operator and to have them start that mobilisation period. And in fact, we've already started conversations with Fusion about demobilisation now, so we're getting a good understanding of what's to come. So as pointed out before, it is a 3-month window, so extreme urgency, and we've had to ensure that we hit those timelines by following the right procurement process here. So through the Procurement Act, the route that we're taking is we are direct awarding following an informal selection process. And it's probably worth saying at this point that we've had our own internal legal working with us very closely on this, as well as our own internal procurement team as well. And we've also had the benefit of using an external leisure consultant that specialises in this in particular. That's been really helpful because they've been able to provide us with the off-the-shelf contract. So something that would have taken us 3 or 4 months to pull together ourselves, they've been able to do in a matter of weeks. So that's been really useful. And within the consultancy team, they have their own procurement experts again, which we have utilised in this case. So our absolute focus here is service continuity. I'm very pleased with the outcome of being able to have the administrators in and run the operations, and that is our foremost, a focus in terms of the next 2 years. We want to minimise reputational damage of any closures, so we need to have that seamless transaction when the new organisation comes in, and that's why we want to maximise mobilisation. So we are looking at a short-term stabilisation of 2 years. That's to kind of stay broadly in line with the Procurement Act for one, but there are lots of other reasons why as well. Another one is it gives us the opportunity to do a more formal leisure review, take stock of our facilities, look at investment, and then potentially go out for a more traditional open market type procurement exercise after those 2 years are finished. What we wanted in this instance, though, even though we're working at pace, is we don't want to compromise. We want full transparency and financial control, and we've had senior financial colleagues involved in this as well. So it's been a real team effort. So what's the nature of this operating model that we've got? So one of the key features of this, which we're introducing, is what's called an agency model, which is new to us at Somerset Council, but is certainly not new in the leisure industry. There's a lot I could say on that, but effectively what it does is allows VAT efficiencies, which we've not seen before. And what we hope from that is to get a better financial deal for the council. It's a bit of a win-win scenario. Leisure operators benefit too. So it's something that we're keen to introduce, not just with this contract, but with the other leisure contracts as well over time, because we believe that there'll be significant savings in doing so. In this arrangement, because we're operating at pace, when we've had soft market testing, we know that the open book model in this arrangement is the preferable way forward in terms of the operator. That means the council holds risk of commercial risk on things like the maintenance of the building for the next 2 years, and any other matters like utilities and so on. And this is the only way we could really engage those operators for this short-term contract. But we believe that within the contract, we've got sufficient safeguards to protect the council. This is a Sport England light touch contract. It's still a 160-page document, but it is written in such a way that it makes the procurement process as efficient and quick as possible. And from an evaluation point of view, which incidentally will be 60-40 pricing quality. So in that respect, in terms of the evaluation, it should be fairly straightforward for us as officers to be able to do that at pace. So before I go on to key risk issues and mitigation, another feature about this particular process that we're going through is that although it is a direct award and it is an informal competition, we've ring-fenced that competition between two national leisure operators. And there's a specific reason for that. Both of these national operators currently are in our county, managing facilities for us. We feel that they are doing a good job at the moment. The contracts that they're managing, the facilities that are managing, are thriving. They're doing well. They're arguably two of the biggest operators in the UK. So there's a lot of stability. We have the background information on them that we need, so that helps us in terms of procurement. They're trusted, they're known, and they're what I would call a safe pair of hands. So this is the reason why we wanted to go down this particular route. It to be so these is definitely an advantage for us. So we're fortunate to be in that situation. So that's a key feature of this process as well. So as I pointed out, we commissioned a company to support us, and they're doing a fantastic job in keeping us honest and on track. We have our own internal team, as I spoke about, who have been scratching through the detail, making sure that our contracts meet the procurement regs, and also from our point of view give us what we need. I've personally been involved in the service specification to make sure that we get the right key performance indicators from them, and we have a good relationship from them in terms of meetings and things like that. Just going to come on and just talk about the condition of the assets. We, at this point, as it stands, we don't fully know what the condition of the assets are, but we do have our property colleagues going out. They would have actually been out in the last few days to do a review of all the internal fixtures and fittings, the mechanical and electrical and things like that, to get an overview. That will swiftly be followed by full condition surveys, and what that will allow us to do is to plan for the next couple of years ahead whilst we're in this period, and sort of really understand what investment is required. So we are working closely with Fusion at the moment. Obviously they are in a difficult position, but they are providing us with really critical information that we can pass on to the operator. As I say, they're demobilising it. We're not the only authority. There are other authorities up and down the UK that are in exactly the same position as us at different positions and what have you. That's very useful because we're touch base with them, and we can sort of compare notes where we need to. But Fusion have been cooperative. They've done a great job in terms of communication, working very closely with ourselves, and they are providing us with the information that we need that we can pass on to the operator. So I think in terms of challenge and risk, we believe that's going to be very low. There is always a risk of challenge in these scenarios. We don't believe that there's likely to be any appetite for other leisure operators that would want to be in Somerset at this point in time. And one of the main reasons for that is because this is a 2-year situation, and most operators will be aware that after that 2 years we will go to the open market, so there's a bigger prize for everybody there. So we do think that the risk is low. Obviously it's not, there is a possibility, and if that does happen, it is going to create a time delay, so it's not desirable, but we're pretty confident that we'll move forward without any challenge. So I think that pretty much, Dan, covers everything in terms of procurement. I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Stuart. So that's where we are. That's the plan for us going forward. We are on track. We're confident. And I think, just to sort of add to, Stuart's reference to the internal team, Stuart himself has a lot of experience in the leisure industry. So we're very lucky to have Stuart within the team, and has gone through procurement processes elsewhere. So we have a lot of knowledge, support, and, as I say, confidence that we'll have a good solution here and keep those facilities up and running for the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I open questions, Frederick Smith-Roberts, portfolio holder, would like to say something.
Yes, Chair, thank you for indulging me. I just really wanted to give a shout out, really, of thanks to the team. for the work that they've done in this. This, you know, is an incredible and quick piece of work that has had to be done, that's taken a lot of due diligence around it, because you will see how we value leisure services. It's around looking to keep those sites open, but the work and commitment that in a really small but mighty team that we've got for culture, alongside Dennis, but actually and Sarah, but they have pulled in, and it's shown how the council can work, bringing in lots of people, whether that's from procurement, from legal, from finance, all of it around looking to secure the future of leisure when this news broke. So I just really want to give a big shout out, because their work has been phenomenal, and so has the team that have kind of corralled around them.
Thanks. I mean, I would echo that. I mean, as chair of this committee, I was given a briefing about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I suppose, about, because the fusion thing had just suddenly broken, so there was a certain amount of disquiet. But and the situation at the time was fluid and difficult, I think is the best way to describe it. And clearly, as we've heard today, the ship has been steadied, and we seem to have a good plan going forward. I've got 1 or 2 questions of my own, because as you acknowledge, there are still risks around this, but they seem to have been reduced significantly from where they were when I had my briefing a few weeks ago. But I'll open it up to the committee first. And the first one to catch my eye is Edric Hobbs, please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to echo this sentiment to thank Federica as lead member and the team for this work. I live in Shepton Mallet. I live opposite Shepton Lido, and we're well aware that it is the only leisure facility you have. We don't have a leisure centre. That was run by somebody else. And I'm well aware that people in Shepton were very, very jittery. I'm also Shepton Mallet Town Councillor. People were very jittery that we'd lose our seasonal swimming pool. So it'd be great to be able to go back, and hopefully we can secure this for the future as it's a standalone. I would have a question around its long-term viability, because it's not supported by any of the facilities that maybe could subsidise it, because I'm aware it's a very short season. And also my division also sort of nearly boundaries Wells with the Wells Leisure Centre. I've seen lots of questions online, unfortunately some of it on Facebook, people know what people like on Facebook, in relation to lack of investment over the years. Are there any plans for short-term investment or in any of the facilities, or will that be left for a couple of years until you've secured a proper long-term lease with partners? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hobbs. In terms of the Lido, I believe it should be reopening tomorrow, 1st of May. So I'm not sure if the weather's going to stay kind, but so that remains the plan. Obviously, as you say, it's a seasonal facility, so there's nothing to suggest anything will change this year. And we've built that facility into the overall arrangement for the next 2 years. So hopefully that will all, you know, pan out for the next season, 2 seasons, in fact, as well. In terms of overall investment, whether it's the Lido or Wells or the other centres, this is exactly why, you know, when Stuart refers to condition surveys, it's an opportunity for us over this 2-year period to really get under the skin of the leisure facilities portfolio, what we have, what condition they're in, what might be needed, what the demand is, and we'll probably work towards a sort of strategy for the long term for leisure provision. So in terms of what that looks like in the very short term over the next couple of years, what, you know, things that need repairing and maintaining, we will work with the new operator to make sure that, you know, the absolute essentials are in place. Clearly we can't commit to anything new and exciting in terms of investment, but clearly we do have good working relationships both with Freedom, Leisure and SLM, or Everyone Active, who have both invested, you know, in the facilities that they currently manage in the south and the west. So yeah, hopefully that's a degree of reassurance.
Thank you very much, much appreciated.
Thank you. I've got a couple of people in the room and there's 2 people online, so I'll deal with the room first. Wes Reed, please.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Can I just echo my thanks to Fed, Dan and Stuart and the team for all the work you put into this. Just for a bit of clarification, I mean, I attend the gym myself in Yeovil generally once a week, sometimes twice. But I've never really given it some thought as to who owns, maintains all the equipment in there. And in your case, in this particular case, what happens to all the equipment? And it's obviously not council owned necessarily. The building might be, but does that all have to be moved out and new equipment put in by that provider, or is it just the lease name changes and they carry on using the same equipment? Or just a bit of clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Reid. Yeah, happy to answer this one. It's a very timely question as well. So as we've described at the moment, the facilities are in the hands of the administrators, and what we know will happen is that the administrator will, or in the course of doing an inventory for all the equipment within all of the facilities. So we anticipate having meetings with the administrator because we have our own inventory, historic one done in 2015, which we will be able to compare against the administrators, and then we will potentially look at going into negotiations, either if the financial mechanism allows us to purchase the equipment for the council, or it could be the operator coming in will purchase the equipment, or it could be the case that the operator, through discussions with ourselves, brings equipment in, depending. This is often, I mean, there's nothing, I suppose this is a bit unusual because there's an administrator, but when there's a new contract and a new operator comes in, there's always this transition and mobilisation period, and the new operator sometimes decides that they want to refresh all the kit because it's an important aspect of what commercially what is offered. So in this instance, we'll know in the next week or so what's happening with that equipment and whether or not we as a council are going to purchase it, or whether or not perhaps the operator purchases it, or some other decision is made.
I've got Marcus Cravis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, firstly, yeah, I mean, well done for managing to keep the facilities open. Although obviously I live in West Somerset, so get a little bit jealous when people start talking about swimming pools. Because rest assured, I know what it's like when one closes, personally. But I was more thinking about how, yeah, question I suppose is because I think we had a presentation. I don't know whether Fusion were in the room when not that long ago when we had them here. Did we? Yeah, I mean, did we? I'm not saying did we see it coming, but were there any alarm bells that were ringing? You know, did other councils? You know, they must have been having the same alarm bells if there were. But then obviously, and excuse me, Chair, if I fumble along here, because I was making notes, but I was listening at the same time. Are we in danger of dealing with, as we're dealing with two national operators, are we again in danger of putting all our eggs in one basket? Well, not again in danger, but are we in danger of actually having less eggs in the basket where before we had more? And are we in an ever increasing workload if this is for 2 years and then we've got to do it all again? And I know we talked about yeah, the prizes. I think I can't remember what the actual word is, but in 2 years there's a bigger contract out there for them. And I think how does that play out? Because obviously they're not in it for the love of it. I do think as a council, we, you know, I think, yeah, I mean, call me old fashioned and I'm not going to be going and saying it's better in the old days, but, you know, if we can't provide swimming pools and public toilets, you think, well, and social housing, of course, you know, what are we here for? So I think congratulations to keep it going, but also we had a presentation from, I think it was a director of public health who talked about a Stronger for Longer campaign. I think there was 2 campaigns, actually, I can't remember the name of the other one, and how there's savings there in health if you can get people more active in the leisure centre. So at what point does we look at this partnership model and think, well, actually, is it working, or will it work in the long run? Because I recall in days gone by looking at the initial contracts, I remember with Somerset West and Taunton's, and the figures were, they were quite surprising what we were being told we would, they'd be able to achieve, and obviously they've not achieved it. So I suppose my question, well, there's a couple of questions there, but are we confident that actually this model, bearing in mind that all leisure is suffering in this country, whether it be physical leisure, hospitality and leisure, or even other leisure, with what's going on with cost of living, what's going on with, dare I say it, I'm not being political, but this government and how they're treating certain businesses, and don't seem to be too worried about whether they survive or not, especially at the small end of the scale. Are we confident that this would work long term, or are we getting to that stage where actually, if we want to save money and if we want to be able to provide a facility to keep people healthy for longer, and therefore save money overall in the NHS, etc., etc. And I'm a classic example of how the NHS has wasted loads of money on me. Is it worth doing, or should we be looking at pulling this, going back to the old days? I'm not joining reform, honest, and bring it back in house so we have more control. Because I think about the time you spend on recruitment or procurement. Actually, if we put that effort into actually doing it ourselves, would it be better? There you go. Some questions.
Right, yes, I think we got there in the end, didn't we? So broadly, you want to work out the pros and cons of taking it in-house or letting it out again, bearing in mind that I think the two
can come back if we're legally allowed to.
Well, I suppose we can. I mean, it occurs to me that the operator in the west and the south, not West Somerset, have been very successful since they've had the various contracts. And I think when this committee looked at leisure, and I think it was a meeting we had in Yeovil 2 or 3 years ago, it was clear that after vesting, the council had an ambition to sort of dovetail all the contracts together, but they were all starting at different operators, starting at different times. So it was a little bit tricky. And I think to an extent, this where we are at the moment gives us an opportunity on that particular road earlier than we would have anticipated it. But I'm conscious I'm stealing Dan's thunder, so I'll let him answer that point.
Not sure I have any thunder for this one, but I think the answer, well, first of all, just to clarify, I think Councillor Cravis, you were alluding to a presentation that we had back in the autumn with the other leisure providers. So that was Freedom and Everyone Active. Fusion, because of the difference in the arrangement, they're not obliged to come and talk to Scrutiny in the same way. I have said before, though, we have built a sort of working relationship though with Fusion, so we have annual reports from them and that type of thing. So that's what happened back then. In terms of going forwards, so the 2-year period, as I said earlier on, that is our window to really conduct a thorough strategic review of leisure, both in terms of facilities, provision, models of operation. I think it's worth remembering that our other 2 contracts with Freedom and SLM run to the mid-30s, 2035 to 36. So there's very little we can really do before then, but time moves on quite quickly, and at that point we'll obviously be ready for a decision about exactly what we want to do next. So that's the benefit of that time period, and of course the intention is beyond the 2-year with this contract, there'll be another contract put in place that will align with the other mid-30s contracts. So you asked about did we see this coming? What did we know? I suppose it's, as I say, we've had a working relationship with Fusion. They've been quite honest about the situation. They approached us formally back in the autumn about their situation and the reasons for that, not Somerset specifically, but as a company. And that sort of started the process of them obviously actively seeking their future, exploring future options in terms of financial restructuring or acquisition. Unfortunately, this is where we are now, so that didn't pan out. But we were aware from that point and have been talking regularly to them.
Thank you. Before we continue, Councillor Power, who was delayed joining the meeting, missed the declarations of interest item and has something to say. Tom?
Yeah, so apologies for being late. I got stuck in traffic in Wincanton, so apologies for that. But yeah, I've got to declare, obviously, because we're talking about leisure, that I do work for Freedom Leisure. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Chris, you wanted on that point, you want to say something, Chris Hall?
Yeah, just in that and in amongst Councillor Crave's questions was one of, could we legally bring it back in house? Well, yes, we could legally do so. That would be an in principle choice for the council. I think the things to consider in amongst that are we likely as a then operator who has no live or current experience or expertise in direct delivery of those services, could we deliver that to a higher standard than a company who exist in the area already and are delivering well for us? That would be a challenge, I think. Could we deliver in principle to a higher standard? Well, I guess if you put enough money into a service, then of course you can increase the standards. One of the benefits we have here is that from an operating perspective, we are receiving a cash positive management fee from operators, and we are doing so with minimal operating risk. Not minimal risk, there are always risks, as we have just seen play out with the fusion arrangements, but actually day-to-day operation is handed over to another entity and we're able to have our assets looked after and protected, and we receive a cash positive income from it. The other thing to bear in mind, of course, is that as a council, we operate a single tier pension service, so we don't have people on different pension arrangements. There may be some different schemes we've inherited from different councils, but we operate through the local government pension scheme or the NHS equivalent for those roles elsewhere in the council. So if we were to insource the service, we would immediately be faced with a fairly significant increase in our pension costs, which increase the cost of operating the service. So yes, legally there is a mechanism, there would be a cost consequence, I expect, and an increase in risk.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Andy Kendall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got one statement and two questions. Statement is thank you for what you all do, and without these services, I wouldn't be here, sitting here in front of you today. That's I'm not an advocate for it, but I'm just saying that's a fact. I'm listening to the report. You keep mentioning two operators in this county already. Are you able to name them, or is that confidential? And my other question is, do you actually have any? I know it's early days, but this is all getting rushed, and it's going at pace. Have you sensed any interest already? Gives a flavour of how it gives a little bit more flavour of how this is actually going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to answer that question, Councillor. Yeah, so yes, we can name them. So the first is Everyone Active, sometimes known as SLM as well, but Everyone Active, and they operate in the west of the region at the moment. And the other one is Freedom, who operate actually in the north and the south of the region. So in terms of interest, as I alluded to in the presentation, we did a little bit of soft market testing, should we say. We had to be cautious about open conversations at that point in time. And both operators informed us that they were, should the opportunity arise, they'd both be very keen. And subsequent conversations have been had as well by ourselves and also the organisation that are supporting us, Fathom, who've got a lot of industry expertise. So we know that there's a lot of interest. I suppose one of the points about our contract is that we know our facilities are very well used. Participation levels are really good, you know, lots of kids on the swimming lessons. So it's quite an attractive package to an operator. So in a way, Somerset didn't contribute to Fusion's downfall because it was a good contract for them, and that's again a good position for us to be in.
Okay, thank you. Now moving online. So the first one I have online is Councillor Adam Boyden, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm one of the surviving councillors from Mendip District Council, and I was in opposition when the lead shadow member for this sort of thing when Fusion won the contract and the 50-year lease in 2015. And it was very, very good in the early days. They put a lot of money into Frome Leisure Centre and Wells Leisure Centre and stopped the council having to subsidise the Lido. And so they did invest. And it was the gym was very busy. The new gym in Frome was very busy, and it was all good for several years. And the problem I think that's led to this problem now is COVID, when the leisure centres were legally closed for several months but had to be maintained to keep the pool safe, and the COVID loan situation, and the drop in members, the drop in use, the lack of the drop in income throughout, and somehow it's been very evident that last few years, particularly last few months, Fusion have been unable to adequately maintain Frome Leisure Centre in many ways, in terms of cleanliness, health and safety, general maintenance, and day-to-day repairs, which seem to take an age sometimes. And we've had, obviously, I've seen complaints from Frome College, quite serious ones, and ad hoc complaints from users and people saying they're giving their membership up. And the Pure Gym being in Frome as well last year led to the refresh of the gym in Frome Leisure Centre by Fusion, but I don't think that was very successful, not successful enough, and the deterioration, the complaints tended to continue. But overall, I think that's been mentioned by Edric or Marcus. There was a lack of a way of properly raising concerns that local members may have had with the facility, because, as you say, Fusion didn't have to come to scrutiny, didn't have to give an annual report or present to members. They did early on when it was good because they had some positive messages, but when they had less positive messages, they didn't necessarily want to do that. And the arrangements that the council inherited from Mendip didn't require them to do that. I'm aware there's several issues with the fabric of the building, like the roof has been leaking into changing rooms in the squash court and the main hall, and there's lots of other issues that the college has highlighted. So there's a fabric issue, and there's also a day-to-day maintenance issue. There has been up to now, and there's also a lack of maybe sustainable energy sources, that solar panels, heat pumps. So ways of reducing the energy bill is a very good opportunity to reduce costs. So I think it's fantastic that this council is stepped in before anybody else knew about it to save the 5 leisure centres and keep them going. And that's a testament to the leadership of Fed and the senior officers there. So it's fantastic that we're keeping this going. But I'd like to sort of see the way forward. How can we make sure that repairs are done to the fabric, an improvement is made to the condition of the building and for all the sites, and that there's some sort of formal and informal way of keeping an eye on it better than there has been lately, and make the most of the opportunities. I'm assuming that the council will be responsible for some spending on these centres where necessary, but also want to make sure that you're aware of the Frome College's issues and they're being addressed.
Okay, thank you. I think I was going to raise some of the points about the condition, because I think it was set out in the presentation, the risks associated with this. I think Councillor Kendall's comment about rushed, it's not rushed, it's at pace, and you were quite right, Andy. This is moving very, very quickly, simply because it has to, and as far as I can see, it's being handled pretty well. But there are some, what I would call, elephant traps along the way, and the first one, of course, is the condition. And I think you said we haven't had the condition reports back yet, and I think it's a good point to raise. Can you just, as Councillor Boyden suggested, give us an indication of who is at the present state, who would be responsible for repairs to the fabric of the building? And going forward, what would that arrangement change? I mean, it's sort of standard lease. The landlord's responsible for the fabric, and the tenant's responsible for the internal bits. But if the tenant has not been keeping up the maintenance, and there's a lot to be done. How is that resolved? I think is that where you were coming from, Councillor Boyden? Yeah. Thank you.
The current situation and the previous situation since Fusion took on the lease of the contract is that they have had complete responsibility for maintenance and repairs, all of it. The fabric of the building, the internals of the building. The council has not had any liability there whatsoever. That's the nature of the lease that was in place. Going forwards, from July onwards, that will be very different. The contract that we are going to be putting in place will be much more akin to what we have in place elsewhere in the county with the two other operators that we've been talking about. I don't know the exact details of how that might work, but as Stuart, I think, described in his remarks about the open book nature of the contract, the council in that period will have far more responsibility for the risk around the maintenance and repairs. The way it will work in reality is the operator will identify, plan and implement those repairs with our input and permission. I think that's broadly how that is intended to work. Going forward for the longer term, I don't know. We have slightly different arrangements in place at the moment between our two other contractors. In one case, again, the council has very little or no repairs and maintenance liabilities. With another one, there's some shared arrangements. So it all depends on what type of contracts are putting in place. But of course, in terms of funding that going forward, and it is a risk, as we've identified, hopefully the implementation of the agency model will be a good mitigation towards that. Those savings can hopefully be used to deal with anything serious that comes up. So it will be a very different arrangement, from July going forward, much more formalised and standard in terms of contract management and the way that we do things with our other contracts.
Okay, in terms of, if as suggested, the condition of some of the centres is or has deteriorated to the extent that remedial work is required now, not necessarily to make them safe, but certainly to make them much better and more attractive. And that responsibility lay with the operator at the time. Who is going to be responsible for picking up the bill for, new liquor paint or repairing the doors or the leaks in the roof or whatever it is? Is it something that we can claw back from the administrators under some kind of dilapidations arrangement? Or is it something that we're going to have to sort out with the new operator on this sort of interim basis that we're working on?
So the current arrangement with the administrators until the end of June is they must carry on with business as usual, and obviously the basic or the fundamental health and safety requirements must be maintained. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to expect any immediate or very, very short-term improvements. For example, the squash courts have been mentioned. We know about the squash courts situation. Clearly, squash is not something in a leisure centre that's going to be hugely commercially beneficial or viable for anybody to invest in. But so this is where we're going to have sensible conversations. We can try and have conversations right now, but there's reality, and then there's the conversations that we'll be having with the new operator of what needs to be prioritised from July onwards. The college was mentioned, so Stuart, can you come back on what we know about the college?
Yeah, sure. So first off, just to say that we have met with the college, and really, I suppose, with the college and other main hirers, the concern is, what's going to happen to our booking, and the college in particular are reliant on the leisure facilities, not only just for their PE activities, but they also use the hall for exams and things like that. So we wanted to reassure the college, and like for other hirers as well, within the contract itself, we've put some protection in there. So when the new operator comes in, they know that the hirers that are currently using all the facilities are going to be protected. And so that was the first point really around the college. We know that the relationship between the college and Fusion isn't great. They've been very clear about that, and we're really keen that the new operator, when chosen, will prioritise the college and build relationships with them, whether it be, I know there's been issues on cleanliness and things like that. The contract that we've got in place, just to reiterate Dan's point, it's more of a standard Sport England style contract. The two operators, Everyone Active and Freedom, are very much used to working with contracts like that. Those two contracts is the ones near enough. There are variations that we've got already. So it's not an unknown quantity to them. It gives us as leisure operators a lot more governance as well. So there are benefits. It's a known quantity to the operator. It's known to us as well, and it's industry best practice. So I'm really hoping that the new operator will breathe some life into these facilities, build these positive relationships, and through our strategy, we can start to look longer term about what we're going to do with these buildings. Like Frome, as we know, is an older building. I think it's 1975. It does need investment. So there does need to be a longer term strategy.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I think, we've been pitched into this particular problem at very short notice, and I don't think anybody should underestimate the difficulties certainly from our side, in dealing with it. I mean, all I can say is, and I think it's been said elsewhere, that we seem to have picked it up and run with it as best we can at the moment, but we're not out of the woods yet, certainly. So, but this is a very timely update. Right, I've got Councillor Denton online, then Tom Power in the room, and then Councillor Hart, I think, will be the third one. So, Dawn?
I don't want to keep you from your cake, so I'll try and be really quick. But yeah, I agree with Councillor Boyden. There are so many people in Frome due to the deterioration of the facilities who are now going across the border into Baines and to Wiltshire to use leisure facilities. So it is a real shame. I think for a long time, Fusion has shown financial instability on Companies House. And it just feels for the residents in Frome that this has been a red flag for a long time. I'm just hoping, and from what I can hear, I hope that there are going to be lessons learned, but that the new contract will make provision for raising red flags earlier, and hopefully to get out of contracts a lot quicker. I mean, I know it was a lease, which was a very different arrangement, but 50 years seems like a very long time. And also, I know that, to build in some triggers, really, to look at these things a lot earlier would be really very useful. As you said about the squash courts, I know that they're a real problem in Frome, but also if the squash courts were brought up to standard, they would generate money because they are desperate to run a league. And these are the closest squash courts for many people. People come from out of county to use these squash courts. And with only one working, they can't really run a league. So it would generate money if the squash courts were up to national standard, really, for them to be able to run those efficiently. It is a very, very special part of Frome. We have NHS provision running out of there. We've got, as you said, the college. It's just really important that we get this one right. And thank you so much for this emergency that you've managed to deal with so effectively. I am also quite pleased that the contractor that's been chosen has a procurement team, because specifically in leisure, because I know that there is a lot of change in our procurement team at the council over the next couple of months when we need them the most. So thank you very much for everything. But I'm concerned about any trigger points and red flags that we can build into a future contract. Thank you.
Yeah, Dan will probably reply, but I think it's fair to say that the contracts we have elsewhere do have regular updates, and certainly they do include reporting facilities to forums like this. So did you want to add anything to that, Dan?
I'm happy to answer this question, if I may, Councillor Denton. just a couple of features really about the contract, which should reassure. First off, we've used this open book. Well, one of the features of open book is, as of it says, so every month we will get a full set of accounts from the leisure operator on their financial performance. And that's probably above what we would normally expect. So that's a positive feature and certainly welcomed by our internal financial colleagues when we discussed that as an option. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I mentioned in my presentation about key performance indicators. We're still going to have those, even though this is a light touch short-term arrangement. So we're going to be looking very closely at participation. We expect the operator to potentially come to meetings when called to do so, and they'll want to, because they're going to want to make a good impression, we think, because they're going to want to be doing this for the longer term. So hopefully that will add a bit of reassurance in terms of the points that Councillor was making.
Thank you very much. Right, Tom
Thank
Power,
you.
please. And then I'll go on to Susanna online.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to say I've always enjoyed going around the leisure centres across Somerset, especially when me and Federica went to have a look around. I'm just devil's advocate on this one, and I really hope this is a success because leisure facilities are so important to our community, especially in rural areas. I just know that if I don't say it, well, I don't know how to word it really. I know full well if my residents see, for example, another operator taking over, Fusion, for example, and let's say I don't know which operator it will be, but if customers see that, for example, that their facilities have got issues, maintenance issues, then they see that the contractor is taking over another contract when they've got issues with their maintenance with their facilities already, then taking it on. How are they going to? Well, I'm just trying to think of the word. How is that contractor going to communicate that their facilities are going to be maintained as well with priority, apart from, let's say, for example, when you're taking over the Fusion ones, with their maintenance issues as well? Sorry, I'll probably word that better in an email than I would on that one. Sorry.
Are you worried about any potential operator overextending themselves?
Yeah, basically that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think first off is that as you'd expect in any procurement, there will be a TUPE process in place. So all the staff working at the facilities will transfer over to the new operator. So there'll be the resource in place. One of the things that we'll be looking at in terms of our assessment when it comes to that is how they plan to resource the facilities and how they plan what their plan of governance is. Particularly we're interested in plan preventative maintenance as well. So all those key points will be scored as part of our scoring criteria. We will want to have confidence, particularly around the maintenance, that they've got a good, strong, robust plan in place. I suppose one of the advantages of them being already in the county is they already have local knowledge, they already have resources, and so we see that generally as a positive, but we certainly expect them to have a plan in terms of how they're seeking to resource these facilities, particularly around plan preventative maintenance, if that helps.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hart online, please. Susanna?
Hello. I have to say I do feel concerned about all of this. We gave them a 50-year lease, which is an extremely long lease, and yet after just 20% of that time, 10 years pretty much, they've failed. And during that time, as a council, we haven't stayed on top of them in terms of insisting that they maintain the buildings properly and look after the asset. So that I don't understand how we've let that happen. And I understand that Somerset Council hasn't existed for 10 years, but you know, the previous councils and us for the last 4 years have not managed to stay on top of them. So how is all of this going to play out now moving forward? Because it still sounds a little bit vague. Now, we have a responsibility to provide fitness and leisure facilities to the public, not least for physical, mental health and well-being reasons. But we've got to be realistic about the financial liability and how and whether this is affordable. And, you know, a decent management consultant should be able to solve a complex problem, create a workable model. And in private enterprise, the expectation would be for this to happen quickly. I'm going to use the word quickly because I think we throw the term pace around, you know, and it doesn't seem to mean a lot. So quickly and effectively. And my concern really is that these are really important facilities for all of our communities. And yet I can see this dragging on, getting expensive and not truly providing what the public needs.
Okay, thank you for that. And I think one of the difficulties, of course, is the legal landscape that an organisation like Somerset Council has to operate in, particularly in terms of procurement. But I don't know whether Chris or anybody wishes to comment on your points.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement to a degree with Councillor Hart in terms of the way forward is to get someone to quickly review the operating model, and within the existing operators that we have for Somerset, they have all of the technical expertise and capability to do that. We believe that our part of this contract, because they have contracts that extend beyond Somerset, but we believe on the basis of the information that we've seen that the Somerset elements of the contract should be profitable, and therefore we believe it's quite an attractive proposition for one of the existing providers. So we absolutely are moving quickly with those two other Somerset operators, providing all the information we have available to us so that they can construct a financial mechanism that works for them and for us. I agree hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? I think everybody entered into the 50-year lease on the view that this was a good arrangement for the council had it been successful, and I suppose the operating environment has significantly changed. So there is a challenge there. Is 50 years the right period of time for any operating model, I think, is the broader question. But as it stands, had that have been successful, I'm sure we'd all be sat around the room thinking what a wonderful thing it is that we've got security over that income for such a long period of time. So yeah, it's really challenging, but to Councillor Hart's points, we are moving quickly. I don't think the team could move any quicker. In fact, in their work with the administrators to ensure that these facilities stay open to the public, our overriding expectation, and the expectation we've been set by the executive, was to keep them open. So we've been working at pace, speed, quickly, to make sure that happens. And I would also give a shout out to all of our support services. So legal, finance, Section 151 officer, it's involved a huge amount of resources to make sure that we don't just hit the expectation, but we do so in a legal fashion. So I think we're probably in agreement with you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rodriguez was online and had his hand up, but he seems to have left the meeting at this point, so I can't call him. Right, I've got, we're coming to the close of the debate. I've got one point that hasn't really been covered, and this is about the procurement challenge that you referenced. And I'm interested in that because I know procurement law is extremely labyrinthine and very difficult to get your head around, and I certainly haven't. But it occurs to me that you said that this fast-paced arrangement that we're moving into to deal with this particular problem quickly is clearly covered by legislation, that we can do that. But you also made reference to the fact that it is open to challenge. And I just really wanted to dig into that. Under what grounds somebody could challenge? Is there actually a legal avenue where somebody could say, well, no, you got this wrong? Or is it actually that we're trying to sort of get round something because we have to move quickly?
I think the key point is that this will be a direct award, and it's a direct award on the basis that this is an emergency or urgent procurement process, and I think that's entirely defendable, justifiable. I understand, and I'm not a procurement expert, but from what I understand, there is always a risk of challenge with a direct award. What we're doing here is that slightly muddies the water. Is it's a direct award, but we want to talk to our two leisure operators, but we're just saying to one of them, here you go, we're direct awarding to you. In a way, legally, we'd probably be safer than what we're doing, but we're kind of taking a balanced view around. Well, it's a pragmatic and common sense approach, I believe, and that's been looked at, of course, by procurement and by legal, and we firmly believe that the risk of challenge is very low, and if there is any sort of challenge, that it is completely defensible.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you're following the direct award emergency route, but you're not necessarily following the principles of it because you're talking to two parties. And a direct award would be to, right, you've got it. Whereas actual fact, you're trying to choose between two suitors, if I may, because I think they're both keen on the work. And that would appear to open up the opportunity for a third party to say, you know, give us a go. But actually saying that under the circumstances, because it's a short-term arrangement and because there are condition and other problems associated with it, you don't think that anybody's going to put their hand up at this point, but they may well when we come to do the full procurement in, what, 2 years' time? Am I reading it correctly?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I would add to that, as Stuart said, we're working with leisure consultants who are very obviously well connected in the industry and have had conversations with the other key players in the industry, and they know exactly what our situation is, and you know that they've completely accepted that, and this is a short-term arrangement. It's an interim arrangement. In 2 years' time, there'll be the bigger, longer prize, which will be of interest.
I mean, I think everybody would agree. We're acting in a wholly pragmatic way to deal with the situation in front of us. But as Councillor Hart has referenced, the fact is that we have to do things in a particular way, which perhaps a private enterprise might not be strictly bound by. So I think, yeah. Okay, I think unless anybody has anything to add, I want to thank you very much for a very detailed presentation, and principally for grabbing this and running with it and moving very quickly as we need to. I think personally, from the chair's point of view, as long as I'm chair of the committee, I would like to be kept informed as to how things are going, because, as we say, there are some risks associated with it. I think you've got them covered, but if something's going to start unravelling, I think I'd quite like to know, and we'll see what we can do and see what I can do to help with that. But other than that, thank you all very much for coming and talking to us today. I'm going to call a 10-minute break, and well, shall we say reconvene at 20 past, so we can avail ourselves of Councillor Price-Sankey's cake. Thank you very much. And diversity, and I invite Councillor Federica Smith-Roberts. Federica, thank you so much for coming. I had a chat with you earlier about your portfolio, and if you look at the report, of course, it covers a vast area, and it's, I think, very much unsung. It's the kind of thing that the council is expected to do, but a lot of it rarely figures because it runs so well, or that's what would seem to be. Anyway, over to you. Thank you.
I will do a little opening for you all, just to cover a bit of what we've been up to this year within the portfolio. So, like you said, Gwyl, I think this report reflects probably one of the widest and most diverse portfolios within the council, spanning communities, our housing revenue account, culture, equality and diversity, regulatory services, and that emergency planning area element. What unites all of these areas is their direct impact on people's daily lives, from the homes that they live in to the culture that they enjoy, the safety that they rely on, and the support that they receive in times of challenge. Over this past year, the portfolio has delivered both scale and substance. whether that's within culture and leisure, where we have continued the redevelopment and progressing the redevelopment of the Octagon Theatre, looking to do that both on time and on budget, and supported the long-term sustainability of Taunton Brewhouse through that strong partnership with the town councils. Those venues are not just buildings, they are engines of well-being, economic activity and community pride, so they mean so much to our communities. Our arts outreach programme, I particularly think that sometimes is quite unsung within the council and the work that the National Portfolio Organisation does in the south. They've reached thousands of residents across that area. They've tackled isolation, they've looked to improve mental and physical health, they're inspiring young people into new jobs, and they're supporting local artists. All of that happening, quite quietly, but all of that work within our culture and leisure team, I think, has also helped us continue or actually rebuild that relationship with Arts Council England, and that relationship with ACE not just benefits us at Somerset Council, but benefits the wider kind of work that culture does in Somerset. You'll have seen maybe in the news recently the brew house having been given some funds. So I think there's real positivity around arts and culture here in Somerset after some time where that not has always been the case. Our leisure services, we've heard a lot this morning around one particular area of leisure. However, we've got a strong commitment to leisure in Somerset, and there's lots of different elements to that, whether that's GP referral schemes that come in, there's women and girls sessions, there's active ageing programs. Those services are helping people live healthier lives, while also then, having an impact on then hopefully lesser people needing to come into the adult social care arena and being able to live that kind of strong and healthy independent lives. We've got our heritage services, those delivered through the South West Heritage Trust. They continue to protect and celebrate Somerset's rich history. They support education. I know my children have been to some events at Somerset Museum, but also that kind of well-being and tourism that they take part in. The acquisition of those nationally significant artefacts. I've been to see the Cheddar Brooch, I've seen the Chew Valley Hoard, and that will continue over the next year, particularly the Chew Valley Hoard, to just increase and educate people on our really diverse and brilliant heritage that we have here in Somerset. I'll go on to our regulatory and operational services. I always think they're kind of those unsung heroes of the council. They quietly get on day to day, effectively delivering volumes of essential work, whether that's our registration services that kind of people see both in the best of times and the worst of times, sadly. They're there supporting people, whether that's our food and hygiene, environmental teams, whether that's our licensing officers doing the day-to-day licensing, but also making sure that major events such as Glastonbury Festival continue to run well. All of those things support our residents and help our communities to be the best that they can do. Alongside that, we've got our emergency planning and community resilience team. You'll see in the report about what they've done over the past year, whether that's the training of our staff and working particularly with partners and local communities so that Somerset is better prepared for whatever lies ahead. We've seen that during Storm Chandra in January, just the work that they do, and ultimately it kind of runs in the background, but when it's needed, they step up. All of that together, and that's really just a small highlight of the brilliant team that Chris oversees and our brilliant heads of service and service directors. All of that shows around the work that they do to continue to deliver positive outcomes, manage risks, strengthen partnerships, but ultimately making Somerset a great place to live, work and play. So yeah, over to any questions or thoughts or comments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Federica? Andy? Tom, I beg your pardon, Tom.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to Federica, actually. Since I've taken over, I think it's just under a year now since I was appointed the opposition lead member, and I've really enjoyed working alongside Federica. And I'd just like to say thank you to her for being so open and honest, and transparency for our catch-ups has been absolutely brilliant. I haven't got anything else to add, but I just wanted to say thank you for all you've done. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Federica. Thank you for coming to our scrutiny. I could ask loads of questions because it is a huge portfolio. And apologies for my questions get slightly West Somerset centric, but yeah, I do represent a West Somerset division. Found it very. Where do I start? Great work with museums. I would just like to point out that in Watchet alone, we have 4 museums. So it's not just about museums in the main part of Somerset. I think we've got 4, including and then 5th if you include the Bakerlight Museum that's currently closed. And looking for a new home. It's a real shame that we can't. While I'm on Watchet, I think ports and harbours fall under you, don't they? I know there's been a bit of, I think the word noise was used earlier with regard to the painting of the lighthouse in Watchet, because it's been red for the last 120 years and apparently it should be green. Well, obviously it's, I mean, I'm always not necessarily the most heritage centric person when it comes to it, but I do think the red lighthouse is a symbol of Watchet. And it's a shame we can't just paint one side facing the sea green and leave the other side red. So if you can add that into the mix, if it's not already being painted. I noticed your report on CCTV. And again, unfortunately, I know it's not, it's the major town in West Somerset, but the CCTV isn't covered under the Somerset system. And I think that's probably due to, I think it's £15,000 a year just for monitoring, which seems a little excessive. And I'm surprised the police would not like it linked in and would maybe help. I know we're obviously with devolution and everything else more is going towards the town councils, but we seem to have a standalone system, which whether, we like being standalone in a way, but maybe it's just a shame about the CCTV. It would be nice if we could put some work into trying to make sure that it does link into the monitoring station Bridgewater, which I understand some people went to look at, and it's quite an incredible setup. That's my CCTV one covered. I'm not working through every point in your report, but there might be a few, so I've got a bit of time. Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating when you look at the customer services figures. It's just the amount of calls, etc. And it's very interesting now that actually as a division councillor, you don't have to report necessarily things because people have already gone on to Fix My Street and done it. But I do think that there's an awful lot of people who still don't know about such things. In fact, I had a conversation this morning as I joked that the new 20-mile-an-hour speed limit didn't save the dead badger in the road. And my local division councillor said, well, you should report that on the portal. And I said, what, for Fix My Street? And apparently there's another one for dead animals, which as a division councillor I knew nothing about. So if as a councillor I didn't know, it'd be nice if try and get that message out to other people. But one of the issues that I think maybe have is that involves me getting in front of a PC and looking on my computer. But actually, if there was an app, and I don't know, has Somerset Council got an app? Because I've just looked and I could buy one for North Somerset Council, but I couldn't get one for Somerset Council. If there was an app, I could have probably done that while I was walking from the car to the door here today, which would have made life easier. I know I would probably use Teams. So maybe that's something that I think would maybe enhance that customer experience a little bit, make it slightly easier. I'm trying to think what else was. I've got one. Did I see? Is flooding part of your portfolio? Did I see that in your report? Flooding? And it's not. It's more environmental, isn't it?
Civil contingency is, or what is emergency planning?
Yeah, emergency planning. So I'll leave that one then. My other question, I suppose, would be. I mean, it's it's down the bottom, isn't it? The HRA. I do. Well, no, I'm going to leave. Probably going to leave that one actually, Chair, for a different scrutiny committee, although I probably won't be on it. And obviously, my other big question was going to be, but obviously it was dealt with. It was quite interesting earlier on about the all the good comments about the good worker in the previous agenda item. But of course, one of my questions on this was, we keep talking about the health and everything else, but we still haven't got a swimming pool in West Somerset. And I know there's a group that's actively looking at it, but it'd be nice if this council could throw its weight behind that, because we have more and more houses being built in West Somerset, for good or for bad. People need somewhere to live, more than happy with that. But as those numbers as those numbers rise of people living in the area, whether it be just 1,000 people or 2,000 people, surely that would make the economics stack up, especially when you look at the economics of the cost savings to the NHS. And finally, a big shout out for building control. Well done with what we're doing with building control. I did ask a question recently. I think I did it in the wrong committee actually about building control. But I've noticed that we've picked up where private building control companies haven't made it or gone into administration. But it was always our Somerset Building Control Partnership was always quite successful. It'd be nice to know how successful that is still being, and what could be done to improve it. I've recently had experience with building control. Highly recommended. Very useful, helpful, and a pleasure to deal with. He says. And I also notice, and this is probably where I get slightly talked about antisocial behaviour. I was trying to figure out how that fitted into your portfolio. And is that antisocial behaviour that affects our tenants? And I think this is quite a, how can I say, it's quite a big thing to people if you're living next door to someone who does it, and that's very well from our HRA account what we can do. But of course, in certain parts of Somerset, it's other housing providers that provide the housing, and how much weight and influence can we put on those housing providers to actually make sure that they deal with it? Because it's when somebody in my division comes to me with an issue with, say, their neighbours in one of their housing association houses, who do I turn to? And actually, what clout do I have as a division councillor with dealing with those? So it's how much weight we can put on those housing associations to deal with the issues. I think I'll leave it at that, Federica.
Thanks, Marcus. I think on the point about antisocial behaviour, these things are really, really difficult. I've had a couple of ones in my division. And my understanding is that whilst the local councillor can be aware of it, actually getting involved in the nuts and bolts of the solution is just not on for a whole host of reasons. And I agree with you. If you're living next to someone who isn't behaving as they should, it's really, really difficult. And these things, unfortunately, they do take time to resolve. Anyway, sorry, Federica.
I've taken a note, so I'll go through them one by one, Marcus, and I'll seek guidance if I need to from the offices. So Watch It Lighthouse, there was a recommendation from our Harbour Master to the Harbour Committee looking at the legislation that we need to follow, the national nautical legislation, and around actually it's not about the whole lighthouse being painted green. Actually one side that faces land, in very simple terms, can still be red, but actually the side that faces out to sea needs to be green in order to provide that kind of guidance to the ships around where the land is. And I think that's really important, because one of the things that's been so positive, I guess, and feedback that I've had is about how Watch It Marina is now working, and the kind of number of vessels that are wanting to come and use that because of that new arrangement with that new the runner of the marina. So I think, if we've got more people wanting to use that, we also need to just make sure that we're compliant with legislation. So I think, the fact that one side can still be that picturesque red that you see lots of artists painting of Watch It, but the other side needs to comply. So that will be moving forward. We have got the go ahead, I think, from the Harbour Committee, and also I think Watch It Mayor, who also sits, I think she's still the current mayor, but their representative on the committee is also comfortable with that solution. I've seen on social media as well. When it comes to the CCTV service, particularly for the West, if I take everyone back a couple of years, we obviously said that when we were in the financial emergency, we could no longer fund the CCTV service. So we have now service level agreements with all the different towns who now contribute to that service, so that there is a 24-hour review of that at that centre that some of you have looked around in Bridgewater. I believe that is still on offer to watch it. I can pick that up with Jono and the service as to what further can happen, but it would be around, they would need to pay for that service where there is 24-hour monitoring that has those links directly into the police, so that there is that coverage. They were discussions. We, in our role at Somerset Council, we have invested in some of the equipment that we've had that have started to age recently. There's been some upgrades. There's been some upgrades I know about in Taunton in particular, because the equipment was so poor. I think Shepton might also be updating their CCTV cameras, and the quality of those cameras are now brilliant. You know, last week, it might have been even been earlier this week, the head or the manager of that service messaged some of us to say the role that they played in stopping some robberies here in Taunton and being able to link directly in with the police with the clarity of those. So it does help that community safety feeling, and those reports go back to those that we've got service level agreements with. Moving on to the Fix My Street element, that what can you can report. We no longer work with Fix My Street, and that was a decision that we made because there was a cost involved in the fact that when they plugged into us, other teams would have to data enter that. So we now have it where we want people to directly report on our website, all different manner of things. It is still working off of the legacy councils models. So there are different kind of areas. You click what council that you want to, that you were previously part of, and there are different kind of, and I know that that causes frustrations. I've had reports back from the south, particularly around some of that kind of usability. I think there needs to be a move forward to transform and increase our website capability, whether that is through the form of the app. I'm a prolific user of our website logging, whether that's animals to potholes to fly tipping, whatever it is I come across on my walk arounds or drive arounds. But we do need to make it so it's even better for our residents to tell us and communicate to us where we are data driven. Onto swimming pool, I have given a letter of support. I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly when that was, but I did give a letter of support to the organisation. I want to say Bruce Lang, who's heading that up, an old employee of Somerset Western Taunton, to say, you know, we're happy to support those ambitions as they look to go through grant models, but that we are in and of ourselves don't have the funding available to provide it, but happy to still liaise with that group around those ambitions to bring a swimming pool facility to Minehead. Thank you for the compliment for building control. We'll make sure that that goes back to the team about how you felt that. I'll need to get those additional information unless Chris has got it around the kind of financial successful elements of building control, but we can get that out to people in writing, that level of detail. Antisocial behaviour. So there's kind of different elements, isn't there, of antisocial behaviour. You've got what the police can do, you've got what your housing association can do. We've also got our antisocial behaviour team, who are kind of really, I would say, in their infancy at the moment as we build that team within the community safety part of the council. They are getting up and running. People can report via our website issues of antisocial behaviour. I personally do think that when you have got a social landlord, whether that be a registered provider or us as a HRA, there are, I guess, levers that you can pull as a neighbour where there is that oversight or path to follow. It is hard as councillors. We don't really have much remit when it's in our areas. It's hard because it's obviously a two-person relationship that's probably broken down. When it comes to registered providers, it sits within Sarah Wakefield as the portfolio holder, but Kirsty Larkin as the head of service. We do have some contact details for some of the registered providers that I've recently been given one from Abri to follow up. The main advice I personally give as a councillor rather than as lead member is that if there is a housing association, find the complaint process on their website. It will guide them through how to do it, guide them to use the housing ombudsman if that is failed, and that at least shows the route that you can take and follow. But ultimately it is more difficult when we are kind of at arm's length, but you know, us being councillors, we at least come with a little bit of sway, so to speak, when you know they want to hear from us. Has that covered everything?
I think so. Okay, thank you very much. Wes Reed, please.
Oh,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Fed, and your team for the fantastic work you all do. You did mention, this is my question, in fact, really, the brew house. Now, is there any intention yet how the money is going to be spent, the government money then for the brew house? Do you have any idea on exactly the plans? Just briefly, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't really have that detail as much. I might hand over to Dan because Dan actually sits, you've done last board meeting, haven't you? He's our observer on their board, so he knows a little bit more about the detail, but it's so great news that they've got that funding.
Yeah, so I've got some more detailed information which I can share with you after this, if you like. But broadly, it's auditorium improvements and in particular electrics and lighting. The lighting in particular, I think it will go LED, which means it'll be a significant energy saving for them. So that's really important.
Certainly, we soon eat up that sort of money, won't we? Really, in terms of the intention of what to do with the money. So, but still, that's good news. Lovely, thank you.
Okay, Andy Kendall.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a pedantic question to ask, unfortunately, on home safety. You've achieved 100% compliance on gas checks, which is absolutely phenomenal. However, if they've got a gas, I might be going down the wrong track here, because you might tell me there's a house in the country that doesn't have gas that you can't get into, but you've only achieved 96% on electrical inspections. Not that I'm moaning about it, but I'm just, in my eyes at the moment, just quickly, if they've got gas, if they're checking the gas, they must be able to check the electricity, but you're obviously going to say they got oil and they don't have gas and that's the houses you can't get in.
I'll give a brief answer and then Chris might be able to come in behind me. So there can be lots of reasons why we don't actually hit that 100% compliance. A lot of it is around access issues. Also, we may not necessarily have those timings exactly right of maybe gas and electric, but a lot of it is around trying to get access to these properties. We have a process if we can't gain access, but it is around tenants letting us into their properties and being able to then go in and do that work. But there can be also that kind of scheduling that they may not be at the same time. We're trying to work on that we do multiple things at once. But I don't know, Chris, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, if I may. So the reference you're making is to EICRs, which is the fixed electrical installation testing that happens on a 5-year cycle. I think the 100% gas compliance is obviously good. That is the minimum standard we expect to see. So it's great, but that is compliance. So every gas property has electric in it by default. Every house has got electric in it, but not every property has gas in it. So we are looking at 2 different data sets. So some will have air source heat pumps, some will have oil fired. There will be a range of heating systems that exist. So the correlation of data sets, yes, there's 10,000 homes, but some of those will be on gas and some won't. So access for EICRs, I would also, and this is just anecdotal, but I would say that most people understand if you're saying I'd like to come around and do a gas safety inspection, it happens annually, so it's much more frequent, and people understand the kind of importance of that inspection taking place. If you say we need to come around and do an electrical inspection and that happens once every 5 years, assuming that tenant has been in place for 5 years, because if they've moved, the inspection happens to prior to their occupation. So it might be something they're not familiar with. It might be something they see as being less important. And we are certainly seeing issues around access. And we have now, unfortunately, started to take people to court to get orders to access their properties from the court because they are refusing access. So we are now taking a more robust approach because as the council, we are judged on compliance. It is not the tenant. So there is no defence for the council to say, well, the tenant wouldn't let us in. It's a compliant or non-compliant issue. EICRs have been, and our compliance with that has been improving over the last 2 years. We did have a difficult, in fact, even prior to that, at one stage we had a self-referral with the regulator, which means effectively we tell the regulator of social housing we've got a problem and this is how we're going to manage it. It's referred as, it's called a self-referral. And they manage that action plan with us, and we've come out of that self-referral now. So there's no action from the regulator. but it's still a difficult process. And actually getting those last few percentages are disproportionately hard, which is why we're now having to take court action. Hope that's helpful.
Sorry, Chair, to come back. No,
Yes,
the results are fantastic, and I do understand the history. But I just had to ask as I said, that's why it was a pedantic question.
Thank you very much. Marcus, you wanted to come back?
It was just on that specific topic there, that talking about court action, because obviously that's quite expensive for us, and for an individual tenant to be causing us extra costs. I suppose we've got no clawback there on the costs, and I wonder if, as somebody who's suffered an electrical fire and just the general inconvenience of it, as well as everything else, is maybe I don't know how we can educate people that actually, if fires do start through electrical problems, rarely, but it's not very good when it happens to them. But maybe if you pick a few, I don't know how we could do it, to maybe educate them of what a house looks like once it's had electrical fire. And I know a couple of houses. I think we had to rehouse a couple of people in our division because of a electrical fire, and actually that was, they were out of the house for 6 months. In fact, because it was a private rented, they never got to go back. And I think it's things like that. It's unbelievable that people will do that, and we have to take court action, and we shouldn't have to deal with it without it costing us a load of money.
Yeah, Chris, you want to come back?
Yeah, so we do always apply for costs, and we are granted costs by the court. So they are in breach effectively of their tenancy agreement. So the court will give us access and they will grant us costs. So unfortunately, this can become quite expensive for our tenants. However, that can all be avoided by adequately arranging appointments. We are very flexible. We don't take that action after one failed visit. There is a whole process that wraps around it. It's the very final piece of the puzzle, and we will often write letters in advance of that court proceeding to advise that that is our next step. And we do tend to see, once those letters are issued, people generally will allow us access. So the court process is a helpful tool. We don't have to use it very often, but we do recover our costs as a result of it. I think the thing around fire safety, so there's an annual fire safety week, so we could probably wrap something into that. So we want to be careful around scaremongering. We are not suggesting for a second that our properties are unsafe, and therefore we need to be careful that we are promoting good practice and behaviour rather than kind of scaremongering, which could be a perception. But we'll look at fire safety week as a means of doing so.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got one or 2 points. As I said at the beginning, I mean, this to a degree is the unsung service, and it's quite clear there's an awful lot of work that's going on that is being well carried out. And I just wonder, if in order to counter some of the criticism that the council gets from time to time, whether we ought to be publicising our successes in these areas a little bit better than we do. That's just a sort of general thing. I was also interested under the environmental health segment to learn about the involvement of environmental health in waste carriers and the fly tipping, because this is an issue that I think probably touches all of us. And I hadn't actually realised that environmental health had a role here, because in my ward, we've gone through the planning, which has been patchy response, shall we say. You try and get hold of the Environment Agency and you could be waiting an awful long time. So actually, if there's a third party involved, and I have to say environmental health have been exceedingly helpful in a fuel oil leak in Milverton recently. They've done some excellent work, and they're trying to push the homeowner into taking appropriate remedial action, because several houses have now lost their water supply because of the contamination. So I think that's going really well. I do wonder whether it's adequately resourced. One of my first jobs was in environmental health, and a whole room of people around, and I get the sense that we don't employ quite so many people in these roles as we used to, which is a shame. And on that basis, one of my jobs was sampling water. I used to have to trot out and sample water. And I see across the whole county of Somerset, we've done 291 in a year, which seems to be an extraordinarily low number, bearing in mind that certainly the criteria in my day was that you had to sample the end of every main to make sure there was no contamination down the far end, and we had to do it twice a year. So there's also, within those figures, I think there's 100 private water supplies which people pay for. So I just wondered whether that's just a reflection of generally better water quality, or whether we were just having to cut our coat according to our cloth. I was also interested to see that the air quality at Henlade, we're seeking to get that removed. But I mean, Henlade's got so many vehicles. I thought it was never going to improve. Is it? It is. So building control's been mentioned. Watchet Harbour, I see that we spent some money helping the dredging, and I always understood it was the tenant, the marina operator's responsibility. I'm also can't help thinking what's going to happen if they build this offshore barrage. What's going to happen to the harbour then? But anyway, that's another matter. One thing I did want to mention was the Lifeline digital switchover. We had a presentation about this 18 months, 2 years ago, and it was clearly a very risky enterprise with considerable concern. It's brilliant that we've heard nothing more about it other than the fact it's been completed. I think that's, you know, for a lot of vulnerable and elderly tenants, for this thing to digitize their Lifeline without, as far as I'm aware, there have been no significant problems, I think is really, really good. And that's a testament to the team that's done that. Under bereavement, is Bridgewater Crematorium not, that wasn't listed? Private, okay. CCTV, customer service. This is the one that's troubled me the most. We're not aligned. I can't find the passage here, but apparently four years after vesting, our customer service responses are still not aligned. I think that's what it said. I'll find it now. And I just wondered when this was going to happen. It's annoying, you can't find what you're looking for. Anyway, if I find that particular reference, hand over to you, Fed, and I'll look for the passage.
So our environmental crime team, again, another small and mighty team that look after whether that they look after things such as the fly tipping. So they'll, you know, where we've got our street cleansing team who do the clear up, our environmental crime team also go and look and see if they can trace that back to somebody. And looking to then take that further where they can. You know, there is different elements of fly tipping happening across Somerset, and it is important that people report it. We will deal with stuff that's on public land rather than private land, but the team do go and see if they can trace it back, because obviously, you know, people dump all manners of different things. They also look after things such as our unauthorised encampments. So when those take place on our land, they follow that through as well. When it comes to Henlade, that is been the fact that over the past, I want to say off the top of my head, 3 years, because it has to meet 2 or maybe 2 years cycles, that it has now come down and met the required standard. So that is really positive news. So I think that decision got taken a couple of months ago, looking at that. I want to say Eastreach, but also there was Yeovil as well. As long as that meets it for another year, that will also have come out of being that kind of level of monitoring. I think that's a really positive step, because as you said, it's still really busy roads. I think that is probably the move to EV vehicles has helped that. But again, positive for those that live along those areas. The outer dredging, the dredging is because I want to say, and Chris will correct me, we have to dredge the outer part of the marina, so that kind of entry point, so we look after that, whereas the marina operator does the inside of the marina. I would need to get some information from the service on the water sampling, just to understand that a bit more about what is our actual kind of requirements versus what we then do, and kind of is that statistic year on year about what we have done for that.
I found the passage, it's in 2.3 and the sort of penultimate line, our natural language bot and a single number continues to be refined as many services are still not aligned since vesting day. And adjustments to the telephony architecture are still going on. So I'm assuming that doesn't refer to customer services specifically, but the other departments. Can you?
Yeah,
I mean, because that must be problematic. Can you give us a sense of how quickly Well, I suppose in a way it's not down to you, but sorry, you were going to say?
I was going to say, so I think we've got something like 65 different kind of lines or something off the top of my head. I could be wrong with that, around how we look to deal with the phone line service, and then the team have it. So if they, we've got different teams in the kind of each service. So I want to say, planning as an example, you've got your west, your south, so they've got to filter into the right teams for those areas. So it's around those services in and of themselves being one, rather than the kind of 4 elements that were, or even the 5 elements that we were in the past. So they are the front door. They deal with, what I want to say 80% of queries directly, and deal with that directly with our members of the public, but they rely on then the services behind them to deal with the more complex cases.
Yes. I mean, I just wondered how. I mean, as I say, and again, I'm sure we do get grumbles about the waiting time on the phone or dead calls and that kind of thing. And in terms of council efficiency, people having to repeat call is not good. And I just wonder how quickly we're going to get everything aligned behind, because it seems to be taking an awful long time. But as I say, it's not necessarily you. You're collective as an executive, I suppose. And the service and the main directors, corporate directors as well. But hopefully we can pick that one up shortly. Those are the main. Oh, there was one other point. Yeah, we had an issue. The Woolaway project in North Taunton, and we've also got some Woolaway bungalows in Oak. This is very parochial, which were going to be done as part of the same. Well, we thought they were going to be done in the same way. It turns out that they were then part of the scheme, and then they were paused. And there is certainly a lot of discontent, and I now understand they're going to be restarted again. And I just really wanted to make the point that communications. I mean, I don't know what the communications are like in Taunton, but certainly in the wider areas of small developments out in the countryside, the communication has not been particularly good to the parish council and to the residents. And this sort of stop-start, at one point, 2 of the houses were going to be sold away. Now they're not going to be sold away because they're going to be used for decant, and they're going to have to be upgraded. And it just gives the impression of a lot of shuffling backwards and forwards, and not a clear project plan. And I don't expect you to answer that particularly, but it is an important point in generality.
Yeah, no, I can answer a little bit on Oak. So I know it hasn't been as smooth as it could have been, that there have been lots of different options brought forward based on the kind of whether you've got owner occupiers, whether there's some of them are now empty and voids. Interestingly, I'm still planning it, Will, but I'm there on site next Wednesday with the local MP if we can get our diaries to align, which you're more than welcome to join us in the project team for, but I can speak to you afterwards. But I'm looking to try and get a meeting on site. I'm personally sorting out childcare.
Okay, is the parish council aware of that?
Not yet,
Because
because
Rachel was supposed to be at the last parish council meeting,
Okay.
which I had to leave
no,
early.
I can do that. We're looking actually for somewhere to meet, so actually it would be good probably to bring in the parish council, but I can arrange that offline with you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've given Federica and her report a good going over, as the saying goes. Thank you all. Well, thank you particularly to your team. There's an awful lot of good work here, and as I say, a lot of it is unsung, and I think it would be nice if the council made a little bit more of this, just general business as usual, and particularly in terms of the successes, prosecutions, and making sure that people are safe. Okay, so we'll note the report, and so we go on to our work programme, and as we said earlier on, this committee doesn't have a forward plan anymore because we have no future. That's a terrible thing to say. But we do need to make sure that we have a list of stuff going forward that we would like the new committee or committees, because bear in mind, it's not all necessarily fitting into the new Environment and Place Committee. Some of it is being hived off into corporate scrutiny as well. And so we do need to sort of pick up on the bits and bobs that we want to make sure are not forgotten. And I think, Marcus, do you want to kick us off with bus services in West Somerset?
I'll always mention the fact you can't get a bus from Minehead to Bridgewater as many times as I can in a meeting. So yeah, I think I just worry that it's such an important issue. It's such an important issue, it's particularly if you're young or don't drive. You don't have to be young not to be able to drive, I suppose. It's such an important issue, particularly when you're out in the rural areas and you need to be able to get to where, where your job might be or your potential job might be. I do believe that this is something we need to get a grip of and get a grip of sooner, particularly as I said earlier, there was some funding being made available from government. So I'd just like to make sure it gets on that first meeting, doesn't end up a month down the line and then get sucked in or get delayed because of other things. And I do think that we need to have that discussion sooner rather than later. I don't think I'll probably be on your committee actually. But anyway, I can always join in online. But I would like to make sure that that is put on the agenda.
Okay, in helping me to make the case, what is your specific concern that you want to be scrutinised? Is it the lack of bus services or the pace at which they're being provided, or?
I think if you speak to anybody, one of the things, there's obviously, it's not just potholes that they talk about. They do, there are people who are generally concerned that and I was speaking to somebody the other day said, I think he was from the east of the county. He said, well, you can't get a bus on a Sunday. I said, well, you can't get a bus any day of the week where we are in some places. And I think obviously there's the use of the on-demand services, and I know there's different ones about, but how we can maybe streamline that as well, make that more available, particularly to those who don't actually live on the main road where the buses go. I think somewhere they said, oh, it takes 7 minutes to walk to the bus stop. Well, where I live, it takes 27 minutes to walk to the bus stop. Luckily, there's a 20-mile-an-hour limit now there, so at least it's a little bit safer. So it's making sure that the elderly, those who are less infirm, can actually have access to some sort of public transport before they end up being isolated. And rural isolation, I think, is the word. And then, of course, we look at what's going on in, the prosperous north of Bridgewater with Gravitas and Hinckley. And but of course, if you live in some parts of the county, you could get a very good job there. And we always talk about making sure that our youngsters have better opportunities and can get better jobs but that's no good if they can't get there. And we keep saying this again and again, and I think I've been going on about it for years, but we still seem to not move forward now. You could say that maybe I should have been more active, and I know there's a bus group, and I think there was a meeting yesterday, but and I know that our own local community network is pushing for this as well, and that's now a topic. And I've got fellow councillors in West Somerset from all parties now singing this, singing on the same hymn sheet. And it just, to us, seems incredible that not all roads from West Somerset lead to Taunton.
Okay, so we are specifically talking about Bridgewater.
I'm being quite specific, but I know there's people in the other side of the county who will be just as specific. So, and what we're all probably going to end up doing is fighting with each other for funding. And there must be some way we can draw it together.
All right.
Because again, if you invest in the future, I look at it as an investment in the future and the county's future.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, very important. Edric, and then I've got Susanna online.
Thanks. I'd like to back Marcus up in a fight for the east side of the county. So we've recently had to put on a school bus from, I think it's Chilcompton, Gurney Slade area, because the 174 or 173 service is so unreliable in taking children to Wales Blue School that we've had to put a service on. And I think Councillor Sully raised it that her own daughter couldn't get the bus just from Crossco into Wells to attend some really important sixth form lessons just before A level. So not only do we have a paucity of service, we have a very, very unreliable service. This was also raised at parish council, my own parish council, so not in my role as a unitary council, my own parish, where a chap said people who want to leave Shepton Mallet and go to college in places like Yeovil and Weston, they can't get back. The last bus back from Wells, I mean, the bus is coming to Wells, which is a major hub, and then children cannot go onwards to the outlying villages after 6:30 at night. So if you finish college in something like Weston or Yeovil, you can't physically get back. And we haven't got a complete cycle path yet, so they can't even use the active travel. So I think we need to do a whole piece around rural bus services in the county.
metropolitan town compared to where we live. But if they have to go to college, say in Taunton, they've got similar issues. And I mean, it's just incredible. Well, we got half the county, well, a significant part of the county, who that doesn't affect them because they've all got cars and they've probably got, some of them might even have electric cars. But if you're young and you're looking to build a future, it's just the fact that you can't get from college, go to live in Yeovil and get to a college in Taunton. It's just how many times do we need to see?
Yeah.
Not regularly. Not if you go to college.
I saw some research recently about that this area is a low wage and part of that must be down to lack of opportunities, which local public transport certainly must play a part of. Tom, and then I'll go to Susanna online.
I think I might jump in. I know exactly what I know is what Susanna's going to say. I think the travellers, Glastonbury. Well, I think just travellers in general. I think we need to keep the pressure on that moving forward. Also, I've forgotten what I was going to say now. I'm having a bad morning this morning. I really am. I'm just going to shut up now. So yeah, don't travellers going forward.
I think, Tom, why don't you let me say it? The lack of a traveller site
Susanna.
and the pace at which it is being delivered is my concern. It's been my concern for years, and I'm really keen that, with the kind of movement of communities and climate and place into one, that we don't lose, what we've started, that we get straight on with this feasibility study and straight on with delivering a site. I just don't think I can put it more clearly than that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And sorry, just making some notes. Right, are there any other issues that are burning a hole? Right. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen,
I would just like to thank the chair for the way he's chaired this last year. Now, I've only been his sidekick for a year, and I think it's due to the quality of Will's chairmanship that I've had very little to do. And I think Dawn, who was sat here before me, would echo this sentiments if she was online. So I'd like to thank the chairman for the way he's chaired, the searching questions he's asked on our behalf, and the way he's summed up every meeting I've been to over the last year. So, Will, thank you very much on behalf of everybody here.
Yes, thank you. You've been fantastic.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. I mean, I have to say, it's been a pleasure chairing this committee.
It's just to remind you, I don't know if you've seen it. Andrew's asked for some names and confirmation of people that wanted to attend the site visit at the Octagon next week. For members of this committee. Sorry, before.
I saw there was an email, but I haven't had a chance to open it. Yes, there is a site visit to the Octagon. Is it next Tuesday?
The 5th of May from 2:30 to 3:30. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure that I am because I've got to be at another meeting straight after, but Andrew will be there and Adam Bergen will be conducting the tour.
Fine, thank you. Right, back to the valedictory speech. I just wanted to say, I mean, it's been a real pleasure chairing this committee over the last few years, and we've dealt with some extremely interesting topics, and one or two that are mundane, but of course that's just the nature of being in the council. Taxi for Councillor Cravis. I can't get a bus. And I just wanted to thank the members of the committee who've changed over the last 3 or 4 years for your contributions and your work. It's been really good and a real pleasure for me. To Chris and to all the officers and his teams who worked to support this, and to Democratic Services, to Rebecca and Jamie and the previous officers who worked with the committee. It's been really good, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And as I say, if I'm confirmed, then hope we can carry on this with the next committee. But as I say, thank you all before I close, I think Chris wanted to have the last word.
Very generous. Thank you very much. So yeah, to continue with the thanks, really, I just wanted to place on record my sincere thanks to you all as members of this committee and the care, commitment and the time that you've given to this role. You each have made an important contribution to the council and the democratic process more widely. The constructive and respectful challenge that you bring helps strengthen our decision making, improves transparency and ensures that our work remains focused on outcomes for residents. That role is valued and essential. We might not always agree, but that's the point. The role of scrutiny is to test and challenge. And I'm really grateful for your professionalism and integrity that you've shown throughout. So thank you.
Right, and thank you, Dawn, for your message online. Right, I will have the final word and declare the meeting closed. And again, thank you all to everybody who's contributed to the success of this committee. Thank you, and safe journey home.